$5 million for a transfer portal quarterback. That's how you get it done. Hats off to Texas Tech with Brendan Sorsby, and that is going to set the market in how you win in college football.
Locked On presents The Portal, the daily podcast covering college football recruiting and everything NIL. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Into the Portal Podcast, and I am Brian Smith, your longtime college football recruiting analyst, bringing you the latest NIL transfer portal and recruiting news. We are going to have a fun live show, and apologies for not being around over the last week or so, but been on the road. Going to be back into the tune of noon live shows and having fun. And this one's probably going to be the best because quarterback is the position that everybody needs if they're going to win big in the next year and the years after that. So we're going to talk about the top of the board, the surprises, the player that I think is most likely going to end up being the biggest surprise and the biggest value, Kenny Minchey, etc. But overall, this is my theme. And the number one thing you need to take away, whether you like it or not, if you do not spend big on the quarterback position, the chances of the team that you root for winning big are all but nil. It's just not really possible in today's world. And it's cool if you've got your own guy that you brought through the ranks and he's next up and you don't have to spend the money. That's fine. But I'm talking about teams that actually need that quarterback to get over the top. There is no going cheap. There is none at all. Colton Joseph, the quarterback that just committed to Wisconsin, I was told he got just under $3 million, and he's probably not one of the top 10 quarterbacks in the portal. So what does that mean for the guys at the top? Well, let's talk about that. Brendan Sorsby reports are $5 million, and that's exactly where I thought it would be. Danny Cannell even mentioned $6 million as a possibility for him. So whatever the number may be, $5 million or more, Texas Tech had a problem. Anybody that watched the boring college football playoff game where Oregon just completely toyed with Texas Tech's offense, you see what it is. I mean, you don't have a quarterback, you're not going anywhere once you reach the playoff. So that will be at least one part of the leg that Texas Tech has eliminated for next season because Sorsby can run. He's experienced. He's won at schools that aren't as easy to win at. Like he was at Indiana, then he was at Cincinnati. When he was at those programs, like, did either one of those teams have elite players at offensive tackle, et cetera, when he was there at those schools? No. Did they have across the board dynamic receivers, tight ends, and running backs with depth, like all the above? No. And they were still competitive, and he's the reason why. And this year, he really took up his level of play as a runner. So if you're going to look at it from a top of the board perspective, with the caveat that he's also healthy, I'll get into the Sam Leavitt situation momentarily. I don't think there's any doubt about it. If you were going to pay $5 million this year for a quarterback, I think Sorsby is the safest bet. Proven, he's a big guy. He's 230 plus pounds. He's a guy that's won with teams that had less. He's not going to have as much talent at Tech as he would, say, at LSU or Miami necessarily. But then again, maybe they'll go get some more guys. And that's where this part of the $5 million equation comes to full fruition. If you get Sam Leavitt, Brendan Sorsby, or any other quarterback that you think is going to fit for you this year or another year and give you a chance to win, here's the big part of it. What receiver isn't going to want to play with a winning quarterback? Somebody that's proven. Again, we'll talk about Leavitt in a second, but let's just use Sorsby. He was helping Cincinnati, a team that nobody thought was going to be that great this year. They almost won at Nebraska. They gave everybody fits in the Big 12, and they don't have the same kind of roster as a lot of other schools. Sorsby was a main part of that, making the right decisions at the line of scrimmage, when to run, when to give up a pass play. He is a team-first guy. That's how you win football games. And I understand all the old school people like, I don't like the $5 million for a play. I get that. But again, if you want your team to win, and barring you just having that guy coming up the high school ranks that's a dude, here it is. Like again, Colton Joseph got just under $3 million for what I heard, and he's not a top 10 portal quarterback in my opinion. He's on the cusp. But if he got almost $3 million from Wisconsin, what do you think some of these other guys are going to get? So let's talk about Sam Leavitt for a second. The reason that I didn't rank Sam ahead of Sorsby, this is just my opinion, was he has a reported Liz Frank injury. And for those who don't know what that is, it's an awkward foot injury where they, like I know another kid, I just talked to him, he explained it. One screw goes in sideways, one goes in this way, and you're trying to bind it together and keep the foot stable. And you got to put little to no weight on it. You're going around on one of those scooters for months. It's not a good time. I don't know if he went with the surgery or if he's just going to let it heal on its own, but there's a lot of risk. A lot of risk. He may not be able to participate in spring ball. So I still had him below Sorsby because of the health factor. But if you wanted to put Leavitt number one, that's fine. And I'm sure LSU, who's allegedly really making a play for him, I'm sure their doctors are going to follow up and do their due diligence, their trainers, etc. But he's another guy. No offense to Arizona State. Did they have the kind of roster that some of the other teams did for the 2024 playoff? No. But he was the guy making the decision to whether to run it, pass it, make all the, of course, Scatterboo. He was happy to hand it to him. Some guys wouldn't have enjoyed that. He's a winner. Those are my two guys at the top that are proven. And Mestamaker, he's probably the hardest guy to discuss because he was at North Texas, is next, and he's got eligibility beyond the 2026 season. So that's something else to discuss. All of those guys, to me, are $4 million or more, no matter who you are, if you're at the top of the board, because they're proven, they have some mobility, or they have some special trait in situations to help them win games where they didn't necessarily have the more talent. Like, well, if it's North Texas, but they weren't exactly a juggernaut defensively. That's, it's a G6 school, but man, he could throw it against anybody, and he makes it happen in the red zone, et cetera, et cetera. Yeah, he's not as dynamic as somebody like a Sorsby. Okay, but he threw for 4,100 yards. I don't care what level you're at. These are the kinds of guys that are at the top. In this market, I think $5 million for a year for the top 2 to 3 guys moving forward is going to be the norm, if not more. LSU, Miami, or if Dante leaves, don't be shocked if Oregon, for lack of a better phrase, if Oregon jumps into the market. They've got the pockets. Indiana already got Hoover. I would assume that was 3.5 to 4 at least. He has some interception issues down the stretch, but that's still a very proven quarterback. That's another guy that's right on that cusp at the top. All of these guys are going to set the market like that. So with that, here are a couple of guys I just want to make some mention of that I also think are very, very good that we'll see. I'm really curious mostly, though, about Dylan Raiola. I don't know where he's going to end up. I don't know what he's going to command because he's not mobile, but he is very accurate. He completed 72%. The dude's accurate, and he's been under the spotlight forever. Byron Brown just picked Auburn. I heard $3.5 million as a number. I don't know if that's accurate or not, but kind of where I thought he would be. He played G6, but he still threw for 3,000 and rushed for 1,000 in the same season. I don't care where you play. That's impressive. Rocco Beck, I haven't heard the number, but he's going from Iowa State to Penn State. I would imagine, paid him $3 million or more. He's another guy that can run. He can make it happen. We're hearing some different things on Austin Simmons. I've heard Mizzou. I need to look into that one more. Minchey to Nebraska. That's the steal so far of the transfer portal cycle. Super athlete, super guy, very intelligent. He was just behind CJ Carr at Notre Dame. Nebraska loses Raiola, which is unfortunate. They may end up benefiting because Minchey's a super athlete and they can run more RPO and be more dynamic. That is my pick, flat out. Kenny Minchey as the player that will be the best for the value that he's going to get. And I don't know what his total is, but he hasn't played much. He couldn't have commanded what some of these other guys did. Great job by Nebraska. Another one that's on that cusp, very talented, and he gave Julian Sayin a run for his money. Lincoln Kienholz at Ohio State has transferred to Louisville with Braum as the coach. If I didn't go with Minchey to Nebraska, this would have been my second pick. I totally trust Braum with QBs, and he's a guy that honestly has the size and the arm and all that. Like Ryan Day knows quarterbacks. If they'd have ended up going with him last year, he'd have been a very good QB. Cutter Boley's an interesting one. He's going to Arizona State. Very physically gifted guy. We'll see what happens there, but he's got a cannon. He's an athlete. I like that pick. Caden Hauser going to Illinois. I also like that one. He could run. He's a kid from East Carolina, good football player. Bryce Baker. Is he going to end up at Virginia Tech? As I do this, I haven't seen, but maybe he's already ended up there. That's a kid I loved at Elite 11. He's only played 1 year at North Carolina, like as a backup. So he's got 4 years of eligibility. If he ends up at Virginia Tech, that would be a steal. And then the guy that I want to talk about after the break as an example of how fit and overall maturity and everything else can overdo all the other things in regards to talent, because he's got some, but is he as talented as everybody else that Florida State was looking at? Not necessarily. That is next right here on the Portal Podcast. Today's show is brought to you by Rocket Money. Let's be real, managing your finances can feel overwhelming between subscriptions you forgot about, bills that keep going up, and trying to figure out where all your money actually goes each month. It's easy to feel like you're losing control, and who has time to track every transaction or hunt down all these different hidden fees? Translation here is pretty simple. You need something to help you out, and that's where Rocket Money comes into play, the personal finance app that helps you take control. It finds and cancels your unwanted subscriptions, monitors your spending, and helps you lower your bills so you can grow your savings. So if you're like me and you forget about something like a Netflix or whatever you're going to use just different times of the year, or if it's a subscription that you don't use anymore, I've had that happen several times where I paid for it literally for months on end. Maybe it wasn't a huge fee, but it's still throwing money out the door. $15 here, $20 there. That's not fun when you find out about it after the fact. You can't get that money back. So make sure you're using Rocket Money to check it out. So let Rocket Money help you reach your financial goals faster. Join at rocketmoney.com/locked-on, rocketmoney.com/locked-on. That's rocketmoney.com/locked-on. If you want to take your game to the next level here with the Portal Podcast and across the Locked On Podcast Network, check out the Everydayer Club. Down in the description, there is a link. You can get all your podcast audio with no ads. That's the number one thing, and it's by far, in my opinion, the best part of this. Whether you're going to the gym, whether you're going for a walk, whether you're going for a long drive, if you want to have a podcast in your ear without any ads, $5 a month or $50 for a year. That's a pretty good deal. Again, down in the description below, there's a link. It'll explain more. And on top of that, there's Discord and more. Check it out, the Everydayer Club here with Locked On the Portal. So let's talk about why Ashton Daniels and several other guys can fit, and for the money. Again, this is a business. Let's not forget that. Why he is a good fit for Florida State. I also cover the Noles, Locked On Seminoles. Check that out. But I called it yesterday, and I had no idea who Florida State was going to get. I said I would take Ashton Daniels, and I got a bunch of people hating on me. Well, I know him from covering him in high school when he was at 7-on-7. I thought he was good. He went to Stanford, and not for nothing, but that's not a school you walk into academically and socially without any background check. Like, you got to go through some hoops to get in there. He excelled despite playing for a team that was, let's be honest, not very good in terms of the talent around him. He excelled for what he had. Well, be very clear. And then this year, when he finally got an opportunity at Auburn to play without poor play calling, the end of the year, he destroyed Vanderbilt and he destroyed Alabama in terms of making big plays. Over 100 yards rushing in both, almost 300 yards passing against Bama, and over 300 against Vandy. He had 7 drops against Alabama, or they'd have beat him. 7 drops. Like, I mean, that's not his fault. Guys like that are graduate students that have the leadership that he does. Again, I know him. Ashton's, wow, know him. I know him well enough. That's the kind of kid you want your children to be around. That's something to look at. When people ask me, what is this team looking for? The questions that I get from coaches, I was just talking to a Big Ten coach the other day, it's the off the field stuff. Anybody can watch film. If you have any common sense about football, okay, just put the pieces together. We talked about this fit, and I'll ask a few questions for the chat here in a second. If you don't have scheme fit, all the stuff goes out the window, but Ashton Daniels is a tremendous fit for Gus Malzahn's offense, and he would be for a lot of RPO-based offense. Like if he'd have went to Kentucky to play for Stein, the guy that was the OC at Oregon, they'd have been fine. He can fit in a lot of places because he can throw it and he can run it, and he's cool with turning around and handing it off too. So I think that's good. And here's the big part. Again, this is a what? Business. College football is a business. Ashton Daniels isn't going to be as expensive as some other guys. Florida State, they had DJ Lagway visit. They also had Anthony Calandria, 2 guys that were starters last year. Probably more expensive. Be my guess. I don't know the specifics, but And I've been around all three of those guys. They're all good dudes, all of them. However, give me the guy that's experienced, that's going to allow his depth chart to mature. Like they've got Kevin Sperry waiting in the wings. He's only going to be there a year. I'll come back to that in a second too. That's a good value. And they're not spending $4 or $5 million like they did on Sorsby. And to be fair, Florida State, just as an example, they're not exactly in national title mode here. Just fair, they're not. Where are you in your progression as a program? There are a lot of little things about how much you're spending. But can he go out and throw for 2,500 and run for 800? And they just got their running back from Texas, Wisner. Like they're in a pretty good spot with Chrome and some other guys. They're going to run the ball next year, and they got three really good receivers. Florida State's offense, they got Landon Thomas back. With the mature team-first quarterback, they'll actually be pretty good. That's at the offensive side of the ball. I don't know about defense yet. They got a long way to go there. But Florida State's going to be pretty darn good. And they're not going to spend as much. This was a good play. And again, I don't know the specific numbers, but there's no way his number was as expensive as some of the other guys. Good play by Florida State, and you can use that as a barometer for many other schools. Not everybody is in title mode. Florida State needs to get to a bowl game. Florida State needs to be competitive. Florida State needs to show signs of life to their fan base and their boosters. Ashton Daniels will absolutely do that. All right, I want to read off a few questions here, and I'll come back through them. If you want to comment on the chat, or if you're listening to this later, watching on YouTube, whatever, comment down below. But this quarterback questions here. For a portal quarterback, if you're going to bring one in, especially has more than 1 year of eligibility, how much risk are you putting your roster in, more specifically the quarterback depth chart, because those players are going to bail? That's one of the reasons I liked Florida State to go out and get Ashton Daniels. Kevin Sperry is a freshman there, and again, just using this as a barometer, he may not transfer with a 1 year guy. With a 2 year player, what was the chances of keeping Sperry? Probably not very good. Just my opinion. Number two, are you overspending to get to where you need to be at quarterback and taking away from something else? In other words, paying Peter and like to rob Paul, and robbing Paul at the same time. You can't take away from D-line or offensive tackle to get a quarterback. Sometimes you got to go a little less to make sure you don't have holes. Don't forget about that. Number three, I talked about this briefly a minute ago, quarterback fit. Does the guy that your school, whoever you root for, are they getting a quarterback that's going to fit that OC and quarterback coach? That's a checkbox. I'll give you an example. One of the reasons I wanted Florida State to get Ashton Daniels instead of DJ Lagway, and DJ's very talented. Do we really think DJ, with all the injuries he's had the last 2 years, really wants to be the quote-unquote prime runner in Florida State's offense? That's just one example. There are other times somebody goes, we want to get a little more mobile, but they're more pass happy. Don't go get a guy that's not a very accurate quarterback that can run if you're running air raid. You've got to fit. Number four, the multiple years of eligibility. Depending on where you're at, that can be good. You've got to make it fit your schools. Is the school you root for, is it really finding the right fit and the right amount of eligibility? Because it depends on everybody's depth chart. So the answer to that is dependent on the school. And then finally, perception. This is the one that I will harp on to the day I die. If the team you root for is taking a portal quarterback every single year, high school recruiting is going to be rough, especially now. Kids, more than ever, expect to play early. It's not really realistic because I have never spoken to a quarterback coach in my life that really wants an underclassman starting for him at quarterback. Ever, ever, ever. They all want juniors, seniors, and fifth-year seniors. But the young players want to start as sophomores. So there's always going to be the problem with guys entering the portal. But if you don't bring in the right guy to keep balance and at least give yourself a chance to keep guys on the roster, every other year you're going to be in a tough spot. And that might be the year that the rest of your roster, especially in the trenches, is ready to make a playoff run. Having an experienced quarterback's great, but also having one that's next up that's at least knowing the system to a level where you're feeling comfortable. He could probably win the job, and then maybe you get a portal quarterback that next spring that competes with him instead of as just a dude, is the way you can keep him around. If you're always going big game hunting and spending $5 million like Tech is on Brendan Sorsby, are you really going to be a team that can win it? That's going to be hard. A lot of other players are not going to be happy. The locker room is going to be iffy. It doesn't work like that very often. So few exceptions, but not very many. So with that, let's check out what we got going on in the chat today. And thank you to everybody that showed up for the live show. It's fun. All right, Katie. I do believe a week or so ago, I said the era of 5 million quarterbacks is upon us. Yes, you did. 100%. And I don't know if anybody else, to Katie's point, will end up being a $5 million quarterback. That's a good question. But I do know this, despite what has gone on so far in the portal, there's always the chance something changes. Like if LSU misses out on Leavitt, there may be a guy that's below him on their board that ends up getting more because they have to get somebody. Supply and demand, circumstance. LSU's fans, I'm just going to use LSU as an example. This is a great point by Katie. They expect to win yesterday. Kiffin is the big name coach. So the circumstance with the team, again, are you in title mode? This is very touchy because I spoke to some recruits at the Under Armour game that are going to LSU, D-line and wide receiver room, running back room. Like they are starting over at some spots. I'm not as high on LSU as I once was. We'll see what Kiffin does because he's a great evaluator. He's maybe the best, but that's going to be hard. So if you have to overspend at quarterback, again, you're robbing Paul to pay Peter or robbing Peter to pay Paul, whatever the old saying is. Look, you can't take away from every spot just to get the quarterback. Kiffin knows that. So it's very important you find some value plays, even if it's not quarterback, at other spots. Katie, Sam Leavitt has had Liz Frank surgery and some of off-field behavior issues makes him a perfect fit for Mario Cristobal's culture. Obviously, Katie is not a big fan of Miami. I don't know Sam at all. I've never been around him. I'm not familiar with him. He's a kid from out west. I believe he's from Oregon. But at the same time, the Liz Frank injury is tough. It's an injury that over half the time it has another break. Why that is, I don't know. But if you have this surgery, it takes a little longer to heal, but you have a less percentage chance of the break. I don't know when he's ready to play. And my big question with Sam, regardless of where he goes, would he be available to at least do some things in spring ball? Or is he just hanging around in a boot? Can't do anything. Because if that's the case, I don't know how you take him and pay him a big salary. You need your quarterback doing live reps in spring ball, even if he's not allowed to be hit, but they're in pads. He has an O-line in front of him, everything, so you can get as many reps as possible. Because otherwise, you're not competing for a title. I don't care what LSU or any other team signs around Sam Leavitt, whoever he ends up with. If he doesn't get to go through spring ball and do live reps, I will be shocked if they get to do the right things in fall, because it's a continuation. It takes forever to gain that confidence in all, not just a few, but all of your pass catchers, tight ends, running backs, and receivers. And some of these guys he's never even met before. So that is a very, very interesting situation. Donnie, Wisconsin so far doing what they said they would. Ponying up, need wide receiver as well. Yeah, I'm going to do a podcast later today, actually, with Ryan Herrings talking about Wisconsin. I even told Ryan something the other day about fall over when I was on the phone with him. I'm like, I'm going to be positive about Wisconsin. He couldn't believe me. I'm like, they're spending money. They're going out and getting guys. It's the only way. And that's the only way they're going to get receivers. But Colton Joseph certainly helps, but he's not a dynamic passer. He's one that is probably better as a runner. They're going to run RPO. I'm curious to see what they get at receiver. Receivers coach there, it's got a tough job because the reputation is it's a run-first school. But if you could just get a few and get a good tight end, you could have a pretty explosive offense. Colton Joseph, for those who don't know, he played at Old Dominion. He had 179 rushing yards last year against Indiana. Nobody since Kurt Signetti and that crew collectively have been in Bloomington has taken apart the Hoosiers defense like Colton Joseph. And he's a quarterback. So even if he's just a decent runner this year and he passes a little better, or maybe he doesn't pass great, but he's got so many physical gifts, Wisconsin's offense is going to be better. 22, busy 43. Most of these guys aren't worth $5 million. Right, they're not. Set the market. I didn't say across the board. Let me be very clear. I'm glad you said that. Leavitt, if he was healthy, would get $5 million, in my opinion. I think Sorsby will be the only one. This isn't an elite year for quarterbacks, meaning top of the board kind of guys. Like if you remember, Cam Ward almost went to the NFL draft, announced and decided to go to Miami. Okay. You look at it on the back end of this, is there somebody that I would rank as high as Cam? No. But at the same time, just below it. Sorsby's close. I don't know if he's quite as accurate as Cam was or as dynamic and throwing from all the arm angles. He did a lot of crazy stuff, but he's still very talented. So that's kind of where we're at. Let's see. Tried, but 473. Donnie, they just bought in Ohio State defensive back Bryce West. Okay. Well, there we go. Wisconsin's doing a lot of, like, they're spending. I was told they were going to be top 1/3 of the Big Ten, give or take, in spending. Good for Wisconsin. Let's see what we got here. Brian Patchett. Thanks for the content, Brian. Go Badgers. Wisconsin's getting better, man. I'm just glad that there's going to be more balance in the Big Ten. That league has been very top heavy the last few years. Tried. Didn't Minchey decommit? If he decommitted from Nebraska, I missed it. I've been doing a bunch of stats this morning. If anybody wants to comment on that, fire away. Oh, wow. Minchey's at Kentucky now. Well, maybe he's going to go to UK. By the way, I said it a little bit ago. If Ashton Daniels had gone to Kentucky, would have been a great fit. Minchey is a very good athlete. I don't know if he's as fast. Like Daniels could probably have played another position. Minchey might have been able to as well. He can do a backflip. He's a guy that make people miss. They're very similar. Minchey at Kentucky would be interesting. Stein's a quarterback coach, man. Katie, who committed to Nebraska and a day later left for Kentucky? That's Minchey, I guess. I must have missed that. My apologies. Wagway is the mystery man. Where does he fit? Well, this is my take on DJ Wagway. And everybody can take this however they like. Fire away in any direction you want to go. If he is healthy, or when he is healthy, he'll have a really good year. In my opinion, it would be best, although this is not going to fit the era very well, if DJ didn't even play next year, got 100% healthy, worked with the trainer in the school wherever he ends up, and they run more of a traditional pro-style offense. I don't want to say Michigan 2023, but think of that offense, but throwing the ball a little bit more because not many people are going to have the line that Michigan did that year. And he could just run play action. He runs 5 times a game. 2 or 3 scrambles, 1 or 2 quarterback sneaks or draws or something. That's it. He needs to not be taking shots on that shoulder, ankle, everything else, fewer shots, more pro style, more play action. He's a very good deep ball thrower. He's a big guy. He can go get you a few yards here and there, fewer shots on him. But I think he needs a year to heal. And I just don't know where he's going to end up. I heard that he was visiting Virginia, but I don't know. Rod Smith, 2216, Miami going after Ty Simpson. Interesting. My question, I'm not saying he can't play because he definitely can. What's the status with Ty Simpson's back? Are we convinced that Ty Simpson is even going to be kind of like with Sam Leavitt? Is Ty Simpson going to be able to go out there and perform in spring? And if he does, is it going to be detrimental to the team long term? I heard back injury, and I knew something was wrong with him. I called it when he kind of fell. I'm like, they're not announcing it. They're all lying on these reports going into the week. The SEC and everybody, they got to turn in these reports about who is and who isn't healthy on injury. They lied. Alabama lied. Oklahoma lied about their quarterback. Everybody lies about the quarterback. But are we sure that's a good idea? That's an interesting one. Let's see here. Tried, but 473. Earl Little to the portal. Oof. Yeah, Florida State, not in a really good spot, in my opinion. But let's see. Rod Smith. Brian, what do you think about Phil at Florida? Or if I will, Florida. This is a fascinating. I'm glad you brought it up. That's one of my extras here. Let me make sure I didn't miss anybody. Wow, you brought that up. He was, if I remember correctly, coming out of high school, played at Prince Avenue, which is just outside of Athens. He set the state record for total yards. He could spin it, but he played at a lower level. That's 1A private ball, and he hasn't played at Tech, but he did play every day in practice under Buster Faulkner, who's now at Florida. So with that being in mind, how are they going to surround him with playmakers? As long as they don't lose Dallas Wilson and some of those guys, Trey, they should be pretty good. But my other question is, how much is he going to run? I don't know what kind of mobility he has. I never saw him play live. He's a fascinating one. And my second question for that is, who's the other quarterback they're going to bring in? Because they need two. They need two. Is it going to be just like an FCS kid that was just whatever and filling out the rosters so they can have somebody for the scout team? Or are they going to bring in somebody to compete with it? I have no idea. I need to talk to Brandon Olson and some other Florida people. But I mean, the kid literally was like number one player in the history of Georgia. I don't care what level you're at. You know, like yards, he has to be able to throw it. So that's at least a starting point. Irish Gordian Knot. Man, the quarterback market is bonkers. It absolutely is. Katie, why would any high school quarterback recruit listen to a word Mario Cristobal has to say? He has never started his own quarterback recruit at Miami. Darian Coleman, and they got Luke Nickel last year. Like this has to be the last year they do it, in my opinion. And I'm sure they'll lose Emory Williams this year if they take one. So we'll see. Donnie, Brian, how shocked were you with Colton going to Wisconsin? I wouldn't say I was shocked because Ryan Herrings had told me that, hey, they're going to spend a bunch more money in the portal. Now, if Ryan hadn't told me that, I'd have been shocked. I said, okay, Ryan's got great contacts. He knows it. We'll just see which players they get. But getting Joseph not only shows they'll spend, but again, they want to run RPO. They want to run an offense where the quarterback makes a lot of yards with his feet. Colton Joseph's about as good as it's going to get. He's freaky. He can play wide receiver. So not only was it good money spent in terms of just getting a good player, it's a good scheme fit. So I was probably more shocked that they got both. It's hard to really get the guy that you want because everybody, like Florida at one point was looking at him, Florida State, etc. I thought that was pretty good. War Eagle 2387, enforceable 2-3-year contracts coming anytime soon. This is what I know. I spoke to an agent this morning, totally unrelated to the quarterback realm, was more of a defense player, but the kid that he was talking to and is representing, the kid wanted a 1-year deal, so they adjusted. The agent would prefer the 2, the kid wanted a 1. Okay. Every scenario is different. Now, when you say enforceable, they're enforceable now, but here's the issue. I'm sure you're referring to this because of what Kirby and Georgia are doing with the Damon Wilson scenario. For those who aren't familiar, I'll give you the 10-second version. Defensive end, elite recruit out of high school, played at Venice High down in Florida, knew him, great kid, transferred to Missouri. I assume he's headed to the NFL. He's a really good player. But he'd signed a contract with Georgia, then bolted, and Georgia's suing him because he didn't finish the contract. They're all enforceable if there's this basic language. But if you sue a kid, all of the following starts a snowball downhill. You're going to tick off that agent. There's a good chance you're going to tick off people from the area where that kid's from. He's from Florida, and on and on and on. It's politics. So it's not whether it's enforceable. It's, are you going to just completely piss off the people around, the recruits, etc., and the agents? This is a discussion point. I'm glad you brought this up. That gets talked about behind closed doors a lot. But if you tick off the wrong people, are you going to be able to recruit in certain spots? So you're probably saying, well, why Georgia do it? Because they're Georgia. They're Georgia. Do you really think that USF would do that? No offense to USF, but there are layers. There's about 5-6 schools that can do that. Probably isn't going to matter much. Georgia's one of them. Ohio State, Notre Dame, Texas, Georgia, Alabama, maybe Florida or something. Most schools, if you do this, if you go after kids, I'm telling you, it's going to cost you more in the long run. It's an awkward spot. But you got to make that decision. Do you want to go after them in true litigation? That's going to gain a lot of publicity and a lot of traction in the news. So be careful for what one wishes for. Katie, I'm a Miami grad. I'm not a Mario fan. I get it. I know a lot of people that aren't, but you got to give him credit. He's done a good job this year. Kirk, Cristobal culture is winning. They're winning right now. They are certainly winning right now. Most of the quarterbacks in the playoffs this year were transfers, starting with Fernando Mendoza. It's the new normal. It's true. Most of them. Now, I'm sure Mario would like to have a guy that's a junior or senior that's really good up next. But again, like I said earlier in the podcast, this does not change. I've never, ever met a quarterback coach that said, Brian, I'd rather a freshman or a sophomore start it for me. Quarterback's hard. They want as experienced a player as possible, and they want somebody with more maturity. The difference between a 19-year-old and a 20-year-old is 1 year, but the difference in maturity can be massive, especially for massive games. That's why you see these portal quarterbacks at programs. Irish Guardian not. Sounds like guys like Minchey with zero real in-game experience will bring $2 to $3 million. Wild times. Minchey's got all kinds of upside. He's a little rarer, but we'll see. What's the story with Dylan Raiola? That's the one I don't know. This is from Jay Programmer. I have not heard diddly about where he's going. If somebody's got something on that, go ahead. You've scooped me. For whatever reason, I have not run across that. I'm not sure if it's good, bad, or indifferent. I have nothing. Raiola's camp, like his, family, strong football ties, NFL player, et cetera, et cetera. That's pretty interesting. Is Ty Simpson entering the portal? I don't know. I actually listened to a Bama podcast yesterday, and that was part of it, whether he ended up transferring or go pro, whatever. They didn't think he would transfer, but like Miami tries to buy guys off other teams' rosters. That's not any news flash. And they want a senior quarterback every year. That's pretty much the norm. And it's why Katie doesn't like Mark Cristobal. But the point is still the same. Everybody wants veteran quarterbacks. Would Simpson work at Miami? Probably. As a reminder, coming up the ladder, Mario Cristobal coached at the University of Alabama under Nick Saban for like 4 years, O-line coach. I would imagine that he's got a soft spot for the culture at Alabama, what the kids go through. It's going to be an easier transition. So take that into account as well. Kurt, 2026 Ty Simpson is Miami's 2025 Carson Beck. Very well could be. Very well could be. Brandon, Simpson will end up at LSU if he goes to the portal. Why do you say that? I don't agree because I don't think Ty wants to run that much, especially after having an injured back this year. Brandon, again, the price for running backs is getting absolutely ridiculous. I haven't heard anything on that. Please elaborate. I haven't even checked into that. But War Eagle 2387, similar situation to Xavier Lucas, Miami, Wisconsin situation. Let me be very clear. Did Miami probably tamper there? More than likely. But there is not a single school, not one, that does not tamper, Wisconsin included. And when I say that, I mean whether it's a booster, whether it's an intermediary, whatever it is, everybody tampers. And that's why Wisconsin took so much heat over the whole Xavier Lucas thing. Everybody does it, period. So I don't know who's next to try to sue somebody else because you're going to look bad, but I don't think that's going to happen very much. Just my opinion. With that being stated, unless somebody else has a comment, I just want to have a couple wrap-up commentary pieces here. I talked about this a little bit ago, and Katie, by the way, shout out to Katie again. Look, $5 million, whether you like it or you don't, is not the point. It's not. The era of the $5 million quarterback is here. The era of $5 million quarterback and somebody going above that is very soon to come. You can like that or you can dislike that. It's true. Welcome to college football in 2026. For the teams that are trying to make a title run, they may overspend because without a quarterback, just like in the NFL, you have no shot. Just none. Who else could command that? Just looking at my list again, if it wasn't for the circumstance with Levitt's foot with the Wiz Frank, I think he could have. Debatable. Beyond that, I'm not sure. Mestamaker at Oklahoma State, I'll be curious to see what he gets. But because he came from G6, I doubt it's $5 million. I'm guessing it's 3.5, 4, somewhere in that range. That's just my projection. Hoover, probably around 3.5, 4, same kind of deal. Beyond that, I don't know if anybody else will go above the 4 million mark, but there's going to be quite a few guys that are 3 million-ish. Byron Brown, I heard was over 3 million. He's going from USF to Auburn. He knows the system. He's very proven. He's a grad student. I get it. I'm curious to see what Rocco Beck got as well if we ever get those numbers. Those are all really, really good players. And again, maturity, age matters. The difference between a 19 and 20-year-old is big. So like Rocco's 22 years old. Great guy. Less concerned. He's probably going to earn a pretty big paycheck for the Penn State and Indy Lions. Thank you once again for making the Portal Podcast a part of your day. And we are back with live shows at noon the rest of the week. This is fun. Definitely talking more quarterbacks, most definitely. But we're also going to be talking about players at other spots. This was just kind of getting back in the groove, and quarterback is the natural start to it. We'll have plenty across the board tomorrow. I'll probably do more of a general overview. But thank you once again for checking out the Portal Podcast. We will see you again soon.